I'm Markia.
Want to hear something scary?
Deer Man Massacre. Somehow, Jonna and Candace had gotten turned around and now were lost in the wilderness of the Wichita Mountains. They were supposed to be camping for Jonna's birthday, but they couldn't find their way to the campsite. They passed an old wooden sign that had a strange drawing of people standing in a circle holding hands and surrounding a buck with enormous antlers. Jonna said the sign meant they were getting close, but it made Candace feel like they didn't belong there. Just then, something rustled in the woods. Candace jumped, which made Jonna laugh. It was probably just a deer, Jonna explained. But that didn't make Candace feel any better. In fact, she felt like they were being watched. As the day slowly turned to night, they decided to set up their tent in a small clearing. They could look for the camping area with fresh eyes in the morning. Candace laid in the tent wide awake. She couldn't sleep, haunted by the feeling that something was out there watching them. Jonna laughed, saying there were lots of things out there. That's the beauty of the woods. Jonna suggested they go check out their surroundings to be sure there were no monsters. The two turned on their cell phone lights and peeked into the darkness outside their tent. And that's when they saw something. It looked like a person, but it didn't move. Jonna took a step closer despite Candace telling her not to. "It's just a scarecrow," Jonna laughed. Candace was relieved for the moment until she wondered why was there a scarecrow in the middle of the woods. As the two women got closer to investigate, they noticed something was off about the scarecrow. It looked too heavy, too real. Candace reached out and touched and felt something cold beneath the straw and sticks. Something dead. They screamed. It wasn't a scarecrow at all. It was a dead body stuffed with straw, and in the center of his chest was a heart-shaped hole. "We need to leave. Now," Jonna said, filled with fear. When they turned their lights on their campsite, they found a massive buck with huge antlers. Its eyes glowed from the light of their phones as it stared intently at the two women. "That's no ordinary buck. Run!" Jonna screamed just as the animal reared up on its hind legs, revealing a lanky humanoid body with a stag's head. Candace and Jonna ran for their lives through the woods as the deerman bellowed a horrible sound. They could hear it crashing through the woods behind them as they tried to escape. Candace suddenly ran into the dead man's scarecrow, and the women thought they were running in circles until they saw another scarecrow, and another, and yet another after that. They looked around to see they were surrounded by the scarecrow dead, all with heart-shaped holes in their chests. As the deermen emerged from the woods into the middle of the circle of dead, they realized this was just like the ominous wooden sign they saw earlier that day. Jonna looked at Candace tearfully and told her to go on without her, that she'd hold off the monster for as long as she could. Candace didn't want to leave her friend, but then the deerman was suddenly upon them, already with Jonna in its hands. Candace screamed and ran, but just as she was about to pass the scarecrows, they sprang to life and grabbed her, holding her tight in their grips. Behind her, she heard a guttural voice scream,
"Bring her to me."
The scarecrow shoved her back into the circle and onto the ground where Jonna was waiting with a bloody heart-shaped hole in her chest. The last thing that Candace saw was the gory face of the deerman as it plunged its maw into her flesh. The women's families eventually found the remains of their camp, ripped apart by what the authorities claimed were wild animals. But the people that lived in the surrounding areas knew that everyone that got lost in those woods in the Wichita Mountains eventually fell prey to the infamous deerman.